Well, hello and welcome to the Smells Like Money podcast. Join me, Suzanne Chin Taylor, the DooDoo Diva, as I interview guests who are making an impact on how we manage and operate systems for conveying and treating wastewater. As a veteran of the wastewater, trenchless, and civil infrastructure industry, each week I'll be bringing you industry know-how from industry pros who know how. Join me each week as I speak with representatives of organizations that are utilizing disruptive or new technologies and methods, and executives who are excited to share how to be successful and sustainable in our vital industry. So whether you want to learn about the latest trends in technology, in treatment or trenchless, gain tips on training and retaining great talent, or simply how to be more efficient, productive, or profitable, this podcast is for you. Ready? Let's dive right in. Well, hi, everybody, and welcome back. We are now continuing our visit with Denver Stutler of U.S. Submergent Technologies and Sedivision. For those of you who joined us last time, we talked about his great vision and journey through civil engineering to public service and into this industry, so back into this industry with technology. But now we're going to focus a bit on some fascinating things that I think we all need to know more about. And the reason that it piqued my interest of wanting to have Denver on the DooDoo Diva Smells Like Money podcast was at the Florida trade show. The FRWC conference a couple months ago. I walked by the trade show booth and they had a sign that said, "It's like an MRI for your wastewater tank." But okay, I know what an MRI is. This caught my interest. So with that, I'm going to let you, Denver, explain to me what that meant. An MRI for your wastewater treatment tank.
Thank you, Suzanne. Good to be with you. And I appreciate the opportunity to share more about our technology. Sedivision we refer to it often as an MRI for your wastewater tanks. And ultimately, what we're doing is providing visibility. As most people know in the industry, wastewater tanks are comprised of dark water. Actually, an absolutely amazing and phenomenal process when you think about what we do with wastewater, it actually separates us from a third world country having a wastewater system. And the fact that we do it in our country with biology around the world is really quite phenomenal. So what we end up with, a properly treated wastewater, is an enormous amount of organic matter, not unlike stepping on the bottom of a lake. Floating and suspended as the process is working, and that makes seeing through the water very difficult. And I used to use the analogy of swimming pools for people who ask me about wastewater in my career and finding out, and I would say, these large swimming pools. And the visibility of a swimming pool, the metaphor of a swimming pool ends at visibility, because you can see through the bottom of the swimming pool, but you can't see through the bottom of a wastewater tank. And so what we started out doing in 2018 was saying there's got to be a better way, give our customers better information so they can make better decisions and plan better the limited resources that they're constantly, have competing demands for. And so it was really quite simple. Really looking back, is we wanted to transform the industry through visibility, and a picture's worth 1,000 words. We say that often. And really, at the end of the day, with visibility, our customer is actually able to see. It reduces or eliminates the guesswork. We've had numerous case studies now where our customers saw significantly more material, which allowed them to tap the brakes on the project and get the funding in place. We've also seen where there's been less material and the customer is able to accelerate the project because it wasn't as much as they had originally. So historically in the business, probing and using a piece of PVC or a piece of pipe and sticking it in the tank and trying to figure it out works well for small tanks. But once the tank begins to be larger, have greater surface area, it makes it more difficult. And so what we did was working with technology, and through a patenting our process, we developed a niche for structures, tanks that are concrete, steel tanks in the wastewater industry, is applying some technology, and really have had the privilege of improving on some technology since we've been taking on this endeavor. And it provides for our customers, visibility, and that they can see and estimate exactly what's in their wastewater tank so that they can make good budget planning decisions. And so we work closely with the owners, the people who are responsible for the budget for a wastewater system, and budgeting and planning those resources. We work with the engineers who are advising the owners, and we even work with the contractors who are oftentimes trying to determine exactly what this unknown variable is. And so it's exciting. I appreciate the opportunity to share it with you.
So when you say about the unknown variables, we're talking about, they know that they have to service or rehabilitate the tanks, make sure that the integrity of the walls is still intact when we're not talking about this. But because of the dark water, you were sharing with me that they really don't know, unless they take a tank completely offline, which is costly and disruptive, how much of that surface they may have lost. And so what this enables them to do is to actually, if correct me if I'm wrong, I just want to make sure I'm understanding it. You can actually determine where within the structure the integrity may still be good, or where it might be bad, and to the degree of how much it may have degraded and what it might need in the way of repair or rehabilitation.
So we're not looking at the structural integrity of the walls.
Okay, all right.
That people will do that when they're drained at times. What we're looking at is restoring capacity. So the reason the capacity of a tank is critical because it drives detention time. Detention time is the treatment function. So our wet cleaning capabilities, and even when we drain down, we learned over time the value of that capacity is enormous and extraordinary for our customers. And in an environment with limited resources, competing for multiple needs, as we all know in the wastewater industry, our fundamental principle is restore the capacity you have. Take advantage of the existing infrastructure before you're forced to build new. And oftentimes we've seen where, because of the age of collection systems, sand and grit and other material was getting into these systems and stealing the capacity. And as a result, the material, and so you lose your capacity in the tank. So ultimately, these tanks typically, if it's on schedule, 5 to 7 years, these tanks should probably be cleaned and reviewed. When we typically go in and clean a structure, they're also looking at the aerators, they're looking at the structural integrity. Those are all part of the process that happens as part of it. But you can't do anything and really evaluate the tank until it's cleaned, which is what is our niche, which is our specialty on our cleaning side of the business, U.S. Emerging Technologies. Sedivision provides the visibility to help them know how much of their capacity has been lost, and more importantly, allows them to manage their budget and plan for this, and also allows them, when they're going out to contract, to estimate. Probably the biggest thing that Sedivision does is it helps prevent change orders. When a contractor goes to a job and they're going to rehabilitate a plant, one of the line items that has great uncertainty is the cleaning of the tanks before they do their work, in part because the tanks are full of dark water. And as a result of that, it becomes a great unknown. We have been to many projects with our sister company that has drained the tank only to find that there's enormous, more double, triple the material that was anticipated. that is a very painful process for everyone involved to get a change order at that point. Managers don't want to be surprised. Contractors don't want to be surprised. When you get to a certain level in the approval process, everyone's judgment is being questioned, even though they use perfectly normal and valid industry assumptions. And so what we've learned is the visibility minimizes the surprises, and in most cases eliminates the guesswork, which is what we're after, and providing this way of problem solving that heretofore was not available.
So when you were saying about it determines, the capacity loss, is it, just so I'm trying to understand it, is it actually able to give you some clues if there are some mechanical issues that might need to be addressed? Getting back to what you were saying, you're not measuring the integrity of the wall, but I imagine that there are some things that might give clues through this process that we should probably plan that we might need to do some work in that area as well.
Absolutely. One of the most notable things is they have fine bubble diffusers on the bottom of these tanks.
I was going to ask you about that. Can it
If
help determine if they're working okay?
Okay. If material is covering those, it's a big clue that part of the, they may be having issues. And even what we've been in tanks where there was not an issue, but at least they could rule it out. So having a clean bill of health from not having, so if you've got a tank that's 10 feet deep and you've got 2 to 3 feet of material, you're only operating on 70 to 80% of your capacity, which means your detention time, the amount of time the water is held, has been significantly impacted. And that's really, at the end of the day, the driver for wastewater treatment. And we've been into tanks where they're half full of sand. I mean, absolutely, once they realize that that's their issue, then that's a very definable problem to solve.
Right. It's like, if you know what the problem is, you can come up with the solution. It almost, exactly. In many cases, you might be going in blind without this. So, I love the fact it's going to remove the pain points, because it's going to actually pinpoint what exactly the pain point is. Then you know what to do about it. So does this have some advantages? You were talking about not having change orders, but when they're talking about budgeting and getting funding, can this help them if things are a lot worse than they anticipated in order to justify to get additional funding? Can this be helpful for that?
We have seen the information provided help sell up internally the value of the expenditure, and it makes for, if it's a project that actually has to go to council or commission or to the elected bodies, having a picture to say these dollars are going to be used to solve this problem. The visibility of the problem helps associate. We've talked, I know we talked in the past, being out of sight is out of mind oftentimes. And our industry suffers mightily from out of sight, out of mind. And as a result, the better the data to help decision makers, policy makers, people responsible for implementing budgets to be able to do their job. Visibility is one tool, arrow in the quiver, that allows them to do that job, in our opinion. And we I just see it's dealing with the truth. And oftentimes, if it's out of sight, out of mind, people question the validity of the request, even though as engineers and an industry that is driven on data, for our decision making, it still gets questioned, and we can, as engineers, be frustrated, or we can see that that's just the way the world works, and meet people where they are versus trying to get everybody to come to our way.
I like that. Meet people where they are. Exactly. We have to do that. Denver, something exciting that you shared with me is that the technology, the Sedivision technology that we've been talking about, is being, I think I'm using the right word, vetted by an organization known as ISLE. And can you tell me more about that? I know it's from somewhere in Europe, but the little bit you shared with me, this sounds really exciting and something that can really make a difference for people when they're selecting technology to help them with solving their big pain points.
Yeah, thank you for asking. A year ago, I really got introduced to it in 2021. ISLE Utilities, as you said, ISLE Utilities is a consortium of scientists from around the world, and they have technology approval groups, and those are regionally based groups that look at new technology, emerging technology, and it's something that, to my knowledge, is not something you can apply for. The industry sort of nominates candidates to be vetted and reviewed. And we had the privilege through their process of presenting around the United States and in Europe this technology, which gets voted on to be considered for a presentation. And the due diligence and the tire kicking of both your technology and your ability to come to market are things that are very, it's a very daunting and complete process, and very thorough, and they and we're really proud to have gone through that. And to me, it's a good housekeeping seal of approval in an industry-run, industry-led, industry-bred group, and it has been really a privilege to be a part of that. And really, it required, to be a participant, a lot of soul searching internally. And were we really ready? Had we really done our homework? Were we capable of expanding? And, for a lot of really smart people to, recognize value in your industry is probably for a business, there's probably no greater pat on the back than for your industry to say, hey, you have something that we think is worth looking at. We'd like to know more. And it's something, we've talked previously about purpose. It drives purpose to, when you're being compared and evaluated by your peers, there's a certain amount of they don't peer reviews are difficult for a reason, and in order to be distinguished in your peer group, it's not easy to say the least.
Well, Denver, thank you so much for sharing about the technology. And for those of you who might be interested in learning more about this, I encourage you to visit their website, which is Sedivision, SEDIVISION.com, or ussubmergenttechnologies.com to learn more about the process and how they can work with you in being able to have the vision into your issues and pain points so that you can make educated decisions about your wastewater treatment facilities. And so, Denver, thank you again for being on the show. And I look forward to having you on again and continuing the dialogue about everything wastewater. And so until next time, thank you for joining us, and keep it flowing. Thanks so much for joining me, the DooDoo Diva, on this week's episode of Smells Like Money. What stood out to you this week? Share your takeaways by leaving me a review. You can find out more about the new technologies, creating sustainable solutions, and insights on how to succeed in our vital industry by subscribing to the show. Whether you want to learn about the latest trends in wastewater infrastructure, treatment, or trenchless, you've got it all right here at Smells Like Money. If you're an industry expert and would like to be considered as a guest for the show, book a quick chat with me by visiting calendly.com the Tuit Group /B-A-podcast-guest, or simply click the link in the show notes below. Until next week, a big shout out to all my industry friends and those who will be. You are my superheroes. Thanks for tuning in, keeping it flowing, and we'll see you all next week.